JPMorgan is predicting that the Federal Reserve will slash interest rates this year following President Trump's threat to impose tariffs on Mexico. But that's not the consensus on Wall Street. Heidi, you've been following this very closely. What are we talking about? I know Goldman Sachs was out looking at this today. Right.
So Goldman Sachs is actually the contrarian here, saying that it's not quite time to ring the alarm and say that the Fed is going to cut rates this year. If we're looking at the probability, though, of a potential rate cut this year, earlier this morning before the market opened, we were discussing this, but according to the CME FedWatch tool, it was about a 17.5% probability that we were going to see a rate cut in this June meeting. However, just before the show, I was looking at the number again, and now it's up to 20%. But a lot of the people that are calling for a Fed rate cut this year are looking to the September meeting, not the one coming up next year. And Goldman is saying, yes, there is a little bit of a slowdown coming, but overall, the financial conditions aren't that tight yet. They are moderately tightening, but inflation is still headed above 2%. So it's not quite time yet. And if the Fed were to cut, it might look a little bit too political. So he gives a couple of reasons. He says, hey, let's just wait and see into the September meeting, because that gives the Fed a little bit more time to figure out what they want to do and take a look at the conditions of the market, the economy, everything like that before making a decision. But they do say that they do acknowledge that there is a little bit of concern here in terms of this tariff situation. They do see those increasing to about 10% in July.
Yeah, and those tariff effects, those impacts, I should say, are going to be talked about when we talk about what Jerome Powell is actually watching here, and we're going to hear him speak tomorrow. And that's something that we'll be tracking here, of course, on Yahoo Finance. But when
Cheung is all over.
Oh, he's always up there. But when we're talking about that chance of a September rate hike, it was interesting to see the way that it's been rising constantly when you look at it. And you're right. I mean, that's something that 80% of people are now pricing in when we look about, we talk about a September rate hike. But that was not what was just a couple months ago.
Exactly. People were throwing that idea around, but a lot of people were saying, no, that's not going to happen. But now, if you look at this chart from Deutsche Bank, it's 85% chance that it's going to happen in September. Whether or not that is the case, of course, it's up to the Fed to decide that. But of course, you mentioned earlier in the show that the manufacturing data was rather weak. We also do have the jobs report that we will be very closely watching coming out on Friday. So a lot of key economic data coming out that I'm sure a lot of market watchers will be keeping an eye on.
And the Fed will be keeping an eye on, as so data dependent we talk about. All right.